The afternoon sun streamed through our kitchen windows as I put the finishing touches on Emma's butterfly-themed birthday cake. 8 years old today, and she'd been bouncing off the walls with excitement since dawn. The house buzzed with the cheerful chaos of family gathering, my parents setting up chairs in the backyard, my brother Tom helping hang streamers, and the sweet sound of children's laughter drifting in from the garden. Mom, look what I found. Emma burst through the back door, her cheeks flushed with joy, and her party dress, the pale yellow one with tiny flowers that she'd picked out herself, decorated with fresh grass stains across the front. But it wasn't the dress that caught my attention. It was the wonder in her eyes and the way she cupped her small hands protectively. "What is it, sweetheart?" I asked, setting down the frosting spatula. "The most beautiful butterfly, it's orange and black, and it let me catch it." She opened her hands slightly, revealing a stunning monarch butterfly resting calmly on her palm. "I want to show everyone, and then I'll let it go free because Daddy taught me that beautiful things should be free." My heart swelled. This was Emma, curious, gentle, finding magic in the simplest moments. Even on her special day, her first instinct was to share her joy with others. "That's incredible, honey. Let's go show the family." We walked into the living room where everyone had gathered before heading outside for cake. Emma's eyes sparkled as she approached the circle of relatives, her precious butterfly still resting trustingly in her cupped palms. "Everyone, look what Emma found," I announced, unable to hide my pride. But before Emma could share her discovery, my sister Jessica's voice cut through the room like a blade. "Emma, you look absolutely dirty." Jessica's tone was sharp, loud enough to ensure every person in the room heard. The conversation stopped mid-sentence. "Madison would never let herself get so filthy at a party. Maybe you should learn some manners from your cousin." The words hit the room like a physical blow. I watched my daughter's face crumble, the light in her eyes dimming instantly. Her hands trembled slightly, and the butterfly, sensing her distress, fluttered away through the open window, taking with it the magic of the moment. Madison, Jessica's 10-year-old daughter, stood beside her mother in a pristine white dress, her blonde hair perfectly curled, looking smug at the comparison. She'd spent the entire party sitting primly in the corner, refusing to join the other children's games because she didn't want to get messy. "I just wanted to show everyone the butterfly," Emma whispered, her voice barely audible. Every muscle in my body tensed. The room had fallen into an uncomfortable silence, family members suddenly finding their shoes fascinating to study. I wanted to unleash fury on Jessica, to demand how she dared humiliate my daughter on her birthday in front of everyone. But Emma was watching, and this was supposed to be her day. "That's wonderful that you found a butterfly, sweetheart," I managed, my voice strained but controlled. "Why don't you go wash up, and then we'll have cake?" Emma nodded mutely and disappeared upstairs. I caught my mother's eye. She looked as appalled as I felt, but we both knew causing a scene would only make things worse for Emma. For the rest of the party, I watched my vibrant, joyful daughter transform into a quiet shadow of herself. She smiled politely when opening presents, said thank you appropriately, but the spark was gone. While other children ran and played, Emma sat carefully, smoothing her dress repeatedly, as if trying to erase the evidence of her earlier happiness. The injustice of it burned in my chest. Jessica had stolen my daughter's joy on her 8th birthday, and worse, she'd done it deliberately, publicly, and without a hint of remorse. I didn't know it then, but that moment would change everything. Not just for Emma, but for our entire family. Because while I was focused on my anger, my 8-year-old daughter was learning a very different lesson, one that would soon leave everyone frozen in shock. The days following Emma's birthday party crawled by with an uncomfortable heaviness. Emma went through her routines, school, homework, dinner, but the spontaneous laughter and chat that usually filled our house had vanished. She stopped bringing me flowers from the garden, stopped pointing out interesting clouds, stopped asking 1,000 questions about everything she saw. It wasn't until Thursday evening, as I tucked her into bed, that the dam finally broke. "Mommy," she whispered, her voice small in the darkness, "am I dirty?" My heart shattered. "Oh sweetheart, no, you're perfect exactly as you are." But Aunt Jessica said, Aunt Jessica was wrong. The words came out harder than I intended. I took a breath, softening my voice. Emma, being curious about the world, playing outside, getting grass stains while you explore, that's not dirty. That's being a kid. That's being alive. She was quiet for a long moment. Then Madison never gets dirty. That's Madison's choice. But tell me, honey, when you caught that butterfly, how did that feel? A tiny smile flickered across her face. Like magic. Do you think Madison has ever felt that kind of magic? Emma considered this seriously. I don't think so. She said butterflies are gross and carry germs. As I kissed her goodnight, a troubling realization began to form. This wasn't the first time Jessica had made comments about Emma. I started remembering other instances I'd dismissed or rationalized away. At Christmas, when Emma had enthusiastically shown everyone her homemade ornaments. How creative. Madison's been taking proper art classes, of course. The school spring concert, when Emma had proudly waved from the stage. Madison's teacher says she has real talent, not just enthusiasm. At family dinners, the constant comparisons. Madison already reads at a high school level. Madison never interrupts adults. Madison knows better than to get her clothes dirty. Jessica wasn't just being a typical competitive parent, she was systematically undermining my daughter, using every family gathering as an opportunity to elevate Madison while diminishing Emma. And I'd been too polite, too conflict avoidant, to call it out. But why? Jessica and I had always had a complicated relationship, but this felt different. More deliberate, more cruel. The answer came to me Friday morning, when Emma's teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, called. I wanted to let you know that Emma has been selected for the gifted program, she said warmly. Her creativity and problem-solving skills are remarkable. She approaches challenges in ways that surprise even me. As I hung up, I remembered Jessica's tight smile last month, when Emma had effortlessly solved a puzzle that Madison had struggled with for an hour. I remembered the way Jessica's jaw had clenched when Emma read aloud fluently from a book Madison couldn't manage. Jessica wasn't protecting Madison, she was threatened by Emma. My daughter's natural intelligence, creativity, and joy highlighted everything Madison lacked, despite Jessica's intensive efforts to manufacture perfection. That evening, as I helped Emma with her homework, she looked up at me with those serious eyes that seemed too old for her 8-year-old face. Mommy, I've been thinking about what happened at my party. Oh, I don't think Aunt Jessica was really talking about my dress being dirty. The insight stopped me cold. What do you mean, sweetheart? I think she was trying to make me feel small so Madison would look bigger. Emma set down her pencil. I've been watching at family stuff. Madison does things that aren't very nice, but nobody says anything because she looks perfect on the outside. Like what? Like when she took the last cookie without asking if anyone else wanted it. Or when she told cousin Jake his drawing was stupid. Or when she pretended she didn't hear grandma asking for help. Emma's voice was matter-of-fact, analytical, but everyone just sees her clean dress and perfect hair. I stared at my daughter amazed. While I'd been focused on my own hurt and anger, Emma had been observing, analyzing, understanding dynamics that many adults would miss. What do you want to do about it? I asked carefully. Emma was quiet for a long moment, her young face serious with thought. At the family reunion next month, could we let Madison show everyone who she really is? What do you mean? Well, Emma said slowly. What if instead of trying to tell people what Madison is like, we just gave her chances to show them? When people think no grown-ups are watching. The suggestion was both innocent and strategic, childlike and surprisingly sophisticated. Emma wasn't talking about revenge in any traditional sense, she was talking about truth. You want to give Madison enough rope to hang herself, I said, using an expression my own mother had taught me. What does that mean? It means sometimes the best way to show someone's true character is to step back and let them reveal it themselves. Emma nodded solemnly. Exactly. I think if people saw Madison when she thinks nobody important is looking, they'd understand what Aunt Jessica is really doing to me. That night, after Emma was asleep, I sat in my kitchen with a cup of tea, thinking about my daughter's proposal. Part of me was uncomfortable with the idea of an 8-year-old orchestrating such a sophisticated plan, but another part of me was proud of her wisdom and tired of watching her be systematically torn down by her own family. Emma wasn't asking to hurt Madison, she was asking for the chance to let truth surface naturally, and perhaps it was time that someone in our family finally saw what was really happening beneath all those perfectly clean dresses and carefully styled hair. The family reunion was 3 weeks away. 3 weeks to give my daughter back her voice and her confidence. 3 weeks to prepare for what would either restore balance to our family dynamics or create a reckoning that was long overdue. As I turned off the kitchen light, I realized Emma had already taught me something important. Sometimes the most powerful response to cruelty isn't matching it with anger, but responding with patience, observation, and strategic truth. My 8-year-old daughter was about to show our entire family what real wisdom looked like. The annual family reunion at my parents' lake house arrived with all the usual chaos: Uncle Bob manning the grill with questionable expertise, cousins shrieking as they cannonballed into the water, and the adults settling into their familiar patterns of conversation and gentle competition. Emma had spent the past 3 weeks preparing, though no one would have guessed it. She'd practiced being what she called extra polite, and had even asked me to help her pick out a dress that was nice but not too fancy. Most importantly, she'd quietly learned how to use the video function on her tablet with the kind of focus she usually reserved for puzzles. Remember, she'd told me that morning, "I'm not trying to trick Madison into being mean. I'm just going to give her lots of chances to be nice, and then everyone can see what she chooses to do." The sophistication of her approach still amazed me. Emma understood something that had taken me years to learn. You can't change people, but you can create circumstances where their true nature becomes impossible to hide. Jessica and Madison arrived precisely on time, Madison looking like she'd stepped out of a catalog in a white sundress, with matching sandals and a perfectly coordinated hair bow. Jessica immediately began her usual performance. Madison was so excited to see everyone, she announced to the gathered relatives. "She's been practicing her violin all week to perform for you tonight. She's already preparing for her audition for Youth Symphony." Emma approached her cousin with a bright smile that looked completely genuine. "Madison, I'm so glad you're here. Do you want to help me with something special for Grandma and Grandpa?" Madison's expression shifted slightly, a flash of suspicion quickly masked by practiced politeness. "I suppose, what is it?" "Well, I thought we could make them a photo album of everyone having fun today. We could take pictures and maybe write little notes about our favorite memories." Emma held up her tablet. "I have this tablet we could use to take photos and maybe even record people saying nice things." "That's actually a good idea," Madison said, sounding almost surprised that Emma could think of something worthwhile. What followed over the next several hours was a masterclass in patient observation. Emma had positioned herself as Madison's eager helper, deferring to her older cousin's judgment while creating situation after situation where Madison's character could shine through, or not. It started small. When Grandma Rose asked if the girls could help bring drinks to the adults sitting by the lake, Emma immediately volunteered both of them. "Madison's really good at carrying things without spilling," she told Grandma, then whispered loudly to Madison, "Could you take Grandma's drink? I know you'll be more careful than me." I watched from across the patio as Madison took the tray, then systematically delivered drinks to the adults she considered important: my parents, Uncle Bob, Aunt Sarah, while leaving the elderly neighbors and family friends sitting empty-handed. When sweet Mrs. Chen, my mother's longtime friend, asked quietly if there might be more lemonade, Madison looked right through her. Emma, meanwhile, had been following behind with a second tray, making sure everyone had something to drink. She didn't say a word about Madison's selective service, just smiled and filled in the gaps. "Madison's so organized," Emma told Mrs. Chen brightly. "She knows exactly who needs what." The afternoon continued with Emma creating similar scenarios. When the younger cousins wanted to play a group game, Emma suggested Madison be the referee, because she's older and knows all the rules better. Madison immediately began changing rules to ensure she won, then got frustrated when the 6-year-olds couldn't keep up with her arbitrary modifications. "That's not how you play. Madison snapped when little Jamie made a mistake. You're doing it all wrong. Maybe you should just watch instead of playing. Emma stepped in smoothly. Madison's really good at explaining things, she told Jamie. I bet if you watch her you'll learn the right way. She turned to Madison with admiring eyes. Could you show Jamie how to do it properly? You're so much better at this than any of us. The praise seemed to intoxicate Madison, who became increasingly comfortable displaying her impatience and condescension toward the younger children. Emma continued to frame every interaction positively, making it seem like Madison's behavior was exactly what everyone should expect from someone so accomplished. But the real revelation came during lunch preparation. Emma had volunteered both girls to help serve, and I watched as she created the perfect test of character. Madison, could you help me carry these plates to the buffet table? Emma asked. There are so many people to serve and I want to make sure everyone gets enough. As they arranged the food, Emma deliberately placed the dessert tray where Madison would handle it. Could you make sure everyone gets cake? You're really good at making things fair. I positioned myself where I could observe as Madison took charge of dessert distribution. She cut herself a generous corner piece with extra frosting, then proceeded to give tiny slivers to the younger children while serving adult-sized portions to the teenagers and grown-ups she wanted to impress. When she reached elderly Grandpa Joe, who had diabetes and always took small portions, she slapped down a huge piece without asking about his dietary needs. Emma watched all of this with wide, innocent eyes, occasionally commenting on how helpful Madison was being. Madison's so thoughtful about making sure everyone gets what they need, she told Aunt Sarah, who was beginning to look uncomfortable as she watched Madison's version of fair distribution. The afternoon's climax came during the traditional family game tournament. Emma suggested Madison be team captain for the trivia contest, because she knows so much more than everyone else. Madison preened at the compliment and immediately began organizing her team with military precision. What Madison didn't realize was that Emma had been quietly recording much of the day's interactions. Not secretly, she'd been open about taking photos and videos for the memory album, but Madison had grown so comfortable in her role as the superior cousin that she'd forgotten to monitor her behavior. During the trivia game, Madison was caught red-handed looking up answers on her phone. When challenged by teenage cousin Mike, she claimed she was just checking the time, while her screen clearly showed a Google search for capital of Mongolia. Everyone uses their phones during games, Madison said dismissively when Mike pressed the issue. It's not cheating if everyone could do it. Emma meanwhile had captured the entire exchange on video, including Madison's phone screen and her defensive justification. But the most damning moment came near the end of the day. Emma had left her art supplies on the picnic table, a watercolor painting she'd been working on of the lake view. Madison, thinking she was unobserved, deliberately knocked over the water jar, sending murky paint water cascading across Emma's artwork. When Emma discovered the mess, Madison was ready with her explanation. Oh no, I was just trying to move it to a safer place. You left it right where someone could get hurt walking by. I was trying to help, but I guess I was clumsy. It's okay, Emma said quietly, looking at her ruined painting. Accidents happen, but Emma's tablet propped up nearby to record time-lapse footage of her painting process had captured everything. The video clearly showed Madison's deliberate action and the calculating look on her face as she knocked over the jar. As the day wound down, and families began preparing for the evening talent show, Emma approached me with her tablet. I think we have enough for the memory album, she said quietly. Her eyes held a mixture of sadness and determination that made my heart ache. Madison had lots of chances to be kind today. I looked at my daughter, still just 8 years old, still small enough to need help reaching high shelves, still young enough to believe in magic and butterflies, and marveled at her strength. She had spent an entire day creating opportunities for kindness and watching them be refused. She had documented not just Madison's actions, but the pattern of behavior that everyone else had been too polite or too blind to acknowledge. Are you sure you want to do this, sweetheart? I asked. Emma nodded solemnly. People should know the truth, and maybe if they see what really happens, they'll understand why Aunt Jessica saying, "I'm dirty" was so wrong. As the sun began to set over the lake and the family gathered for the evening's entertainment, I realized my daughter was about to do something that would change our family forever. She was about to hold up a mirror and force everyone to see what they had been choosing to ignore. The little girl who had been publicly humiliated at her own birthday party was about to teach a roomful of adults about courage, truth, and the difference between looking perfect and actually being good. The evening talent show was a beloved family tradition, held on the deck overlooking the lake as the sun painted the sky in shades of pink and gold. Folding chairs formed a semicircle around the makeshift stage area, with my parents' old projection screen set up for anyone who needed visual aids. Jessica had spent the cocktail hour ensuring everyone knew about Madison's upcoming performance. She's been taking dance lessons for 3 years now, she told anyone within earshot. Her instructor says she has real natural talent. Not everyone can move with such grace. Madison stood beside her mother, radiating confidence in her pristine white dress, not a hair out of place despite the full day of activities. She'd managed to stay spotless while everyone else showed the comfortable signs of a day well spent: grass stains, sun-flushed cheeks, slightly mussed hair. Emma sat quietly beside me, her tablet in her lap, looking small and thoughtful. She'd changed into a simple blue dress, her hair in a ponytail that had come slightly loose during the day's adventures. She looked exactly like what she was, a child who had spent the day playing, helping, and observing. "Ladies and gentlemen, family and friends," my father announced in his traditional Master of Ceremonies voice, "welcome to this year's talent show. We have some wonderful performances lined up." Madison performed first, executing a contemporary dance routine to a popular song. She was technically proficient, her movements precise and practiced. The family applauded enthusiastically, with Jessica beaming from the front row. "Beautiful, Madison," Jessica called out. "Wasn't that just perfect, everyone?" Several younger cousins performed next. Jamie's magic tricks, teen cousin Sarah's guitar solo, Uncle Bob's questionable comedy routine that made everyone laugh despite themselves. Each act was met with warm, encouraging applause. Finally, my father looked around. "Anyone else want to share their talents with us?" Emma raised her hand quietly. "I'd like to share something," she said, her voice soft but clear. "It's not really a talent, but it's something I've been working on." Jessica's expression shifted slightly, a tightness around her eyes. "What kind of something, Emma?" "A presentation," Emma replied simply. "About what I learned today." I felt my heart racing as Emma stood up, tablet in hand. She looked so small standing there in front of our entire extended family, but there was something in her posture, a quiet dignity that commanded attention. "Could someone help me connect this to the screen?" she asked politely. My tech-savvy brother Tom stepped forward to help with the connection. Within moments, Emma's tablet was projecting onto the large screen, visible to everyone in the gathering. "What I learned today," Emma began, her voice steady, "is that there are different kinds of clean." A murmur went through the audience. Jessica's face had gone very still. Emma touched the screen, and a video began to play. It showed Madison at the dessert table, cutting herself the largest piece of cake, while giving tiny slivers to the younger children. The footage was clear, undeniable. "I learned that some people think being clean means having the right clothes and perfect hair," Emma continued, her voice matter of fact. "But I think being clean means having a clean heart." The next clip showed Madison deliberately ignoring Mrs. Chen's polite request for lemonade while serving drinks to the adults she deemed important. The contrast was stark, Madison looking directly at the elderly woman, then turning away without acknowledgement. The room had gone completely silent. Even the younger children seemed to sense the gravity of the moment. "Madison taught me a lot today," Emma said, and there was no malice in her voice, just sad honesty. "She taught me that some people are kind when grown-ups are watching, but different when they think no one important can see." The video compilation continued, Madison changing game rules to ensure her own victory. Madison snapping at 6-year-old Jamie for making mistakes. Madison looking up answers on her phone during trivia, then lying about it when caught. With each clip, I watched the expressions around me change. Grandma Rose's hand had moved to cover her mouth. Uncle Bob was shaking his head slowly. The younger cousins were staring at the screen with confusion and hurt recognition. Jessica had gone pale, her mouth opening and closing without sound. But the most devastating moment was yet to come. Emma's final video showed Madison deliberately knocking over the water jar to destroy Emma's painting, followed immediately by her calculated performance as she discovered the accident. This was my painting of the lake, Emma said quietly. I was making it for Grandma and Grandpa to remember today. Madison said it was an accident, and maybe she really believes that. But I think the video shows what really happened. The footage was damning. Madison's deliberate movement, the way she looked around to ensure no adults were watching, the satisfied expression that crossed her face as the paint water spread across Emma's artwork, destroying hours of careful work. The silence that followed was deafening. It wasn't just quiet, it was the kind of complete absence of sound that happens when time seems to stop, when everyone present is processing something that changes everything they thought they knew. Madison's face had gone from confusion to horror to rage as she realized what was happening. That's not fair, she suddenly screamed, shattering the silence. You tricked me, you were spying on me. That's not allowed. Her perfectly composed facade cracked completely. She made me do those things. She kept asking me to help and following me around with that stupid tablet. It's not fair to record people without telling them. But I did tell you, Emma said simply. I said we were making a memory album and taking videos. You said it was a good idea. You didn't tell me you were going to show everyone. Madison's voice rose to a shriek. This is mean. This is so mean. Jessica finally found her voice, but it came out as a strangled whisper. Madison did you really do those things? She tricked me. Madison repeated, tears of rage streaming down her face. She's not supposed to make me look bad. That's not what cousins do. The irony of the statement hit everyone simultaneously. Madison was furious that Emma had made her look bad, apparently unaware that Emma hadn't made her do anything. She had simply created opportunities for Madison to choose kindness and documented what Madison had chosen instead. Grandma Rose spoke into the terrible silence, her voice gentle but firm. Emma, honey, come here. Emma walked over to her great-grandmother, who took her small hands in her weathered ones. That took a lot of courage, sweetheart, and you're right, there are different kinds of clean. The most important kind is having a clean heart, which means being kind even when you think no one is watching. She looked up at the assembled family, especially when you think no one is watching. The weight of those words settled over everyone. This wasn't just about Madison's behavior, it was about all the times people had chosen to look the other way, to prioritize appearance over character, to enable cruelty in the name of keeping peace. Emma looked around at her family, her young face serious but not triumphant. I didn't want to make Madison look bad, she said quietly. I just wanted everyone to see that being dirty on the outside from playing and exploring isn't the same as being dirty on the inside from being mean. She turned to her aunt, and her next words were delivered with devastating simplicity. Aunt Jessica, at my birthday party, you said I was dirty and that Madison would never let herself get so filthy. But I think you had it backwards. I had grass stains on my dress because I was catching butterflies to share with everyone. Madison kept her dress clean because she didn't want to play with anyone. The silence that followed was complete, profound, and absolutely frozen. Every person in that circle was forced to confront not just what they had witnessed, but their own role in allowing it to continue. My 8-year-old daughter had just held up a mirror to our entire family, and no one could look away from what they saw reflected there. The silence stretched on for what felt like an eternity but was probably only 30 seconds. 30 seconds of every adult in our family confronting the uncomfortable truth that they had failed a child, not just Emma, but Madison too. It was my mother who finally broke the spell. Jessica, she said quietly, her voice carrying the weight of decades of family diplomacy finally set aside. We need to talk. Jessica looked around the circle of faces, some sympathetic, some stern, all deeply uncomfortable. Her perfect composure was cracking like ice in spring. This isn't how children should handle conflicts. You're right, Emma said simply, causing everyone to look at her in surprise. Children shouldn't have to handle conflicts like this. Grown-ups should handle them before children get hurt. The wisdom in those words hit like a physical blow. Several family members visibly winced. Uncle Bob cleared his throat. I think we owe Emma an apology. All of us. He looked around the circle. How many times have we seen Madison be unkind and said nothing because it was easier than dealing with it? She's just confident, Aunt Sarah said weakly. but her heart wasn't in the defense. There's a difference between confidence and cruelty, Grandma Rose said firmly. And we've been pretending we couldn't see that difference because it was uncomfortable to address. Madison was still crying, but her tears had shifted from rage to something that looked like genuine distress. I didn't mean to be mean, she said through her sobs. Everyone always says I have to be perfect. I have to be the best at everything. I have to show everyone how good I am. Jessica's face crumpled at her daughter's words. Madison, I never meant, you did though, Mom. Madison's voice was small now, the imperious tone completely gone. You always tell people how perfect I am, and then when I'm not perfect, you get upset. So I try to make other people look worse so I look better. The honesty of it was devastating. In trying to make Madison perfect, Jessica had taught her that other people's failures were her success. She had created a child who could only feel good about herself by making others feel bad. Emma walked over to Madison, her movements careful and deliberate. Madison, do you want to be friends? Real friends, not the kind where one person has to be better than the other. Madison looked up at her younger cousin through tear-swollen eyes. But I was so mean to you. I ruined your painting on purpose. I know, Emma said simply, but maybe you did it because you felt bad inside, not because you're a bad person. My mom says hurt people sometimes hurt other people. The maturity of the statement left the adults speechless. An 8-year-old was demonstrating more emotional intelligence than most of the grown-ups present. Jessica stood abruptly, her face flushed with shame and anger, though it was unclear whether the anger was directed at Emma, at herself, or at the situation. This is humiliating, she said. To have my parenting questioned by a child in front of the entire family, Jessica. My father's voice cut through her words with quiet authority. Stop. Just stop. She turned to him, eyes flashing. Dad, you can't seriously think this was appropriate. What I think, he said slowly, is that Emma showed more grace and wisdom in the last 10 minutes than most of us have shown in years. And what I think is that maybe it's time we all looked in the mirror. He stood up, his tall frame commanding the attention of everyone present. I've watched Madison be unkind to other children for years. We all have. And we've all made excuses because it was easier than having difficult conversations. We failed Emma, and we failed Madison too. How did we fail Madison? Jessica asked defensively. By letting her think that cruelty was acceptable as long as she looked perfect doing it, my mother answered. By praising her appearance and accomplishments without teaching her character. By allowing her to believe that her worth came from being better than others instead of being kind to others. Emma had sat back down beside me, and I put my arm around her shoulders. She leaned against me, suddenly looking very young and very tired. I'm proud of you, sweetheart, I whispered to her. That was incredibly brave. I just wanted people to understand, she whispered back. I wasn't trying to hurt Madison's feelings. I just wanted them to see that being mean isn't okay, even if you look pretty while you do it. The conversation continued around us as family members began to speak up, sharing their own observations and regrets. It wasn't comfortable. Years of enabled behavior don't get addressed without pain, but it was necessary. Teen cousin Mike spoke up. I've been wanting to say something about Madison's behavior for like 2 years, but every time I tried, someone would say I was being mean to a younger kid. I stopped wanting to play games when Madison was around, added little Jamie. She always made me feel stupid. One by one, the truth emerged. Madison's pattern of behavior had been visible to everyone, but the adults had consistently chosen politeness over protection, enabling over addressing. Jessica listened to it all with growing horror, finally understanding the extent of what her parenting choices had created. When the last person had spoken, she looked around the circle with tears in her eyes. I don't know how to fix this, she admitted quietly. I don't know how to undo what I've done. Emma surprised everyone by standing up and walking over to her aunt. Aunt Jessica, maybe you could start by saying you're sorry for what you said at my birthday party. And maybe Madison could help me make a new painting for Grandma and Grandpa. The simplicity of the solution, acknowledgement and action, was profound in its clarity. Jessica knelt down to Emma's level, tears streaming down her face. Emma, I am so very sorry. What I said to you was cruel and wrong, and you didn't deserve it. You are a wonderful, kind, creative little girl, and I was wrong to try to make you feel bad about yourself." She took a shaky breath. I think I was jealous of how naturally good and happy you are. Madison has to work so hard at everything, and you just are naturally wonderful. And instead of helping Madison learn from your example, I tried to tear you down. That was wrong." Emma hugged her aunt, and the gesture was so genuine, so free of resentment, that it broke something open in all of us. The evening ended with concrete changes. Jessica agreed to seek counseling for both herself and Madison. The family established new guidelines about addressing unkind behavior immediately, rather than avoiding conflict. Most importantly, Madison and Emma began the slow work of building a real relationship based on honesty rather than competition. 3 months later, I found Emma and Madison in our backyard, both covered in dirt, working together on a garden project. Madison's hair was messy, her clothes were stained, and she was laughing as Emma showed her how to properly plant marigold seeds. "Look, Aunt Lisa," Madison called to me, holding up her muddy hands with pride. "Emma's teaching me how to garden. I've never been this dirty before, but it's actually really fun." Emma grinned at me, her face smudged with soil and glowing with happiness. "Madison's really good at remembering which plants need more water. We make a good team when we're both trying to help the flowers grow, instead of trying to be better than each other." Later that evening, as I tucked Emma into bed, she reflected on everything that had changed. "Mommy, do you think Madison is happier now? What do you think?" "I think she is. She doesn't have to try so hard to be perfect anymore. She can just try to be kind." Emma was quiet for a moment. "I think Aunt Jessica is happier too. She doesn't have to pretend Madison is perfect all the time." "And what about you, sweetheart? Are you happier?" Emma considered this seriously. "I'm happier that Madison and I are real friends now. But I think I was always happy. I just needed everyone else to see that being happy and messy is okay too." As I kissed her goodnight and turned off the light, I marveled at what my daughter had accomplished. She had taken a moment of cruel humiliation and transformed it into an opportunity for truth, growth, and ultimately healing. Emma had taught our entire family that real cleanliness isn't about spotless clothes or perfect appearances. It's about having a clean heart, honest intentions, and the courage to choose kindness even when it's difficult. Most importantly, she had shown us that sometimes the most powerful response to injustice isn't anger or retaliation, but patience, truth, and the unwavering belief that people are capable of being better than their worst moments. The little girl who had been called dirty at her own birthday party had cleaned house in the most important way possible. She had swept away the pretense and artifice that had been poisoning our family relationships, leaving behind something genuine, honest, and infinitely more beautiful. And in doing so, she had given everyone, Madison included, the chance to start over with cleaner hearts and clearer understanding of what really matters.